Welcome to Real Life Mentoring, where we explore real life issues to help you make an authentic difference in the world.
Hi, it's Chris and Christina. Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about how do you grieve? How do you celebrate? Anytime that there's transition, I think it's good to evaluate what are some things that I need to grieve and what are the things to celebrate. So this concept is actually found in Jennie Allen. She every year provides a free resource on her website. It's JennieAllen.com, JennieAllen.com. There's a dream guide on there. And so she has you evaluate, looking back at the previous year, so 2024, what are things to grieve? And then looking forward to what are some things that not looking forward to, but what are things that I can celebrate? And so as we look at this as a way to deepen relationships, obviously in the area of mentoring, we thought that this would be a good resource to offer you, the listener, and looking at yourself through the end of 2024. So we are spiritual, physical, relational, emotional, mental, professional, educational. And so what we've done is we've kind of looked at each one of those tools and said, okay, for 2024,
Each one of those tools.
each one of those tools,
aspects of who we are.
right, each one of those aspects in that tool, looking at each one and going, okay, for 2024, are there some things you need to grieve? Physically, relationally, emotionally, mentally, professionally, educationally, spiritually. We did this with our family over the Christmas break, and it was just a good time to sit and reflect, what things have happened in the past year that I really need to take some time to at least acknowledge, if not really grieve? What surprised you about that tool when you thought about things to grieve in 2024?
It gave me a point of reference to start with, but let me back up for a moment. If I said, Christina, I come up to you, I want you to talk about ways that you need to grieve. What are some things that come to your mind? Or do you find yourself wanting to push away from that, or you embrace that? What comes to your mind when you hear the word grieve?
Just a deep sadness, a letting go of, a cutting off from, yeah.
And left to myself, I will say, I don't care to do that.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, we actually grieve all the time. It's internally many times.
Yeah.
A mentor, someone you trust, someone who cares about you, could help bring that grief out where you actually verbalize it. Therefore, you acknowledge it, understand it better, and maybe have a better way of moving forward as you've grieved it.
And the importance of grieving is you can sort of process, maybe you are a verbal processor, you can process a grief. It doesn't have to be a person or a big, it could be the ending of a season. Oh, my toddler started pre-K or whatever. Grieving, oh, I won't have as much time with them at home. Okay, how does that make you feel? Just processing the ending of something really gives you a framework then to look forward and to celebrate.
That helps my brain because when I hear grief, I first want to go, well, then someone's died. I've lost someone.
Right.
But it's really broad, like you said. My toddler doesn't need me so much anymore in this area, or I lost my best friend to death.
Yeah.
So it's all kinds of areas that we would grieve.
Well, and just to give you some practical examples, like you said, grief. What are things you need to grieve? Maybe you spent time in a certain profession and you retired. Obviously, there's some grieving there, right? But maybe you just switched positions at your job and maybe you're grieving the colleagues that you used to see on a regular basis. Maybe you've been part of faith community and for whatever reason you move locations or are in the same town and you're not going to that. There's a grieving there. And grieving doesn't have to be a person. There's lots of life transitions. It's just worth a pause to go, wow, what have I grieved? One of the things that came out that I was not aware of had I not vocalized it is that I'm still grieving the loss of my friend Marty. She passed away several years ago, and always through the holidays, there is not a sadness that keeps me in bed and covers over my head, but there is a sadness during the holidays because, one, she enjoyed the holidays so much. But I always look forward to spending time with her because she enjoyed the holidays so much. And she would really take time to buy the perfect gift for you because she knew me so well. And as I started to grieve and vocalize, I think I'm grieving, missing Marty, What I'm actually grieving is that sense of being known so deeply by another person. Yeah, any thoughts?
My favorite aunt died at age 92 this past August of 2024 at the time. And, older, and her health had gone downhill for several months. So we knew she was getting closer. But I grieved. But I just had this thought. I had the privilege of speaking at her funeral, her celebration service. Interesting. Some people call it a funeral. Some people call it a celebration service. You're actually doing both.
Yeah.
Hopefully. We're grieving the loss of them, but we're also celebrating who they are in our life. But I had the privilege of getting the conversation started up front. I shared some of my memories and what she meant to me, and I opened it up to others. And one of our younger cousins, my younger cousin, she came up to me afterwards and said, "Thank you so much. Your words helped me to get some of my thoughts out of my head. Mm-hmm. And you helped me to grieve in some ways." And I thought, what a privilege that is, that we could speak to a group of people in our own grieving, and it actually helps someone else understand what's going on for them.
Yeah. So grieving, it's not sitting in a corner and crying your head off, but it's acknowledging the loss that you've had to any degree, from, on a scale from 1 to 10, from a 1 loss to a 10 loss, but taking the time to reflect, because that may lead you to a new point and it gets it out of your head. Processing that grief with another person is so, so helpful. It helps you understand yourself, understands maybe some things that you've lost and maybe why that affects you so deeply. Yeah, just processing with another person the griefs that you've experienced. Obviously, this is January when we're recording this podcast. It's great to do at the beginning of a new year. But through any transition, looking back, what are the things that I can grieve? But also, now let's switch topics if you're okay. What are some things that happened in the last year that I can celebrate?
I do want to add on to grief for a moment.
Yeah.
You made me think of this. Grief is loss. It's also change.
Yeah.
It's also something that's different. Mm-hmm. I go, if I could just remember that, it's not always loss, but it's just something different.
Yeah.
It's a change. Mm-hmm. All right. So we're talking about
things to celebrate as well.
Things to celebrate.
Yeah. I think that's important too, because it is so easy to we tend to, as a society, be bent toward the negative. But looking back at the things to celebrate, I think is so worthwhile, because I think we forget the accomplishments. And just as in grief, on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 little grief, 10 big grief, 1 little things to celebrate to 10 big things. So as we all looked back, of course we wanted to celebrate, 10, the birth of our sweet, sweet, sweet Zion grandson. But there were some little 1, 2, 3 celebrations as well. And it's just important to take the time to celebrate things that we've accomplished.
Well, my 92-year-old aunt who died, I grieved her, but I also look back and I celebrate the relationship I had with her. We're so close. She's like a mother figure to me. So many years of being together and sharing great stories and experiences. I lived with her 2 different times in my life. I still celebrate the things I learned from her and the nurturing and the love she gave me. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting how you can grieve a physical death of someone who you care about, but you can also celebrate what you've been given because of that life.
Right. Recently, I sat across from a young woman that I mentor, and when I asked her this question, we took the 6 areas, and just to repeat those, were spiritual, physical, relational, emotional, mental, and then professional education. I said, what are some things that you can celebrate? Well, she's a first-time teacher, and she said, oh my goodness, when August was, here, I was a little freaked out. And she said, now in January, I'm celebrating the things that I've learned. I'm not where I want to be, but my goodness, I'm not where I was. I'm really celebrating those things. And again, on a scale to 1 to 10, where is that for her? I don't know. But it's just so important to take the time to realize where growth has been made.
It's important also not to compare myself with other people.
Oh, for
Something
sure.
that I would celebrate, it may mean nothing to someone else, or they may go, oh, that's no big deal. But to me, it may have been.
Right.
So I want to focus on what I'm supposed to celebrate.
Without comparison.
Without comparison.
Right. I want to give you that resource tool again. This is a free resource provided every year. Jennie Allen is the author. If you go to her website, it's JennieAllen.com. She has a dream guide that you can download and print for free. She has additional resources. There's a conversation guide where you can go into more depth about this. But we wanted to just give you, as you start 2025, some things to think about. Are there things you need to grieve? Take the time to grieve them. But at the same time, celebrate those things that you've accomplished. Yeah. Any closing thoughts, Chris, on this?
No, doesn't this document, doesn't it offer some questions that help people?
Yeah, I just said there's a conversation guide as
Right.
well. Mm-hmm.
Do you want to?
I don't have them.
You don't have those?
Yeah, it's on the website.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on the website. And there's great conversation starters about, she gives her own, she has some holistic ways to look at emotionally, personally, ways that you've seen yourself grow personally. Yeah, it's a whole dream guide that you can download, and she gives you questions that go along with it. But we just took this first portion.
Okay, so I would ask this question, and I know the answer, but so their listeners hear it. What's the purpose in me grieving, taking time to grieve or to celebrate? I mean, life is life. Just move forward.
Right.
What comes to your mind?
I think there's a great leadership tool called Know Yourself to Lead Yourself. When we take the time to know ourselves, know the things that caused us grief, while at the same time know those things that we can celebrate, we lead ourselves better. Does that make sense? So if I know that I'm grieving still after a couple of years, the loss of my friend, I can be kinder with myself. I can go, okay, there are still some wounds there that are fresh still. Do I need counseling? Probably not. But if I know where I'm at, if I know what things are causing me grief, then I can lead myself much better.
What comes to my mind, if I don't ever address things that I need to grieve, it's like they're maybe open wounds. Or I don't want to even look at those because it causes me pain. I can't heal from something like that. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really important to, again, I don't wake up in the morning saying, I get to grieve today.
Right.
But guys, this is really true. I've experienced being with another person, like you, Christina, as my wife, or a good friend, or guys that I've mentored, and we grieve over something together. That unity does something. It builds a sense of resolve and maybe letting go and strength and many other characteristics, I would say, when you're able to grieve with someone. And I just had this thought as well. When you can grieve with someone, I believe that relationship goes to a deeper level.
Sure. Something about sharing another's sufferings. You know, the Bible says like iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Sometimes that sharpening comes in suffering. And when we can sit with somebody else's suffering, and at the same time, the celebrating. You know, I have a sweet, sweet friend, Shannon. We've interviewed her before on different podcasts, and we got to catch up after the first of the year. And yesterday, that's exactly what we did in our catching up. That was not the plan. Tell me everything you need to grieve and tell me. But that's what we did. Okay, let me give you an update on life. Here's what's going on with this child and this what with work and whatever. And what we did in the course of that 2-hour conversation is we grieved the things that we needed to grieve, and we celebrated the things, and it's usually both and. We're usually not all in a season where everything is grief, or celebrate. It's usually both and. You know, life is the grief and the celebrating.
I've had the privilege numerous times to direct and lead funerals, celebration services. One of the things I always want to do if the family is open to it, at the end or sometime during the service, what if I hand the microphone, or you come to the front, or just stand where you are and share memories of the person who has died. And you know what? Why many people are afraid to do that? They're afraid they may show emotion.
Yeah.
One day it clicked. I thought, wait a minute. Doesn't it make sense when we lose someone to death?
Yeah.
We are grieving. That emotion is very healthy and normal. So I actually have told people that, look, if you're afraid to get emotional, realize we're all in that same boat.
Yeah.
You've lost a person you care about. To show tears and emotion is very normal. You may not do that when you share, but if you do, it's totally okay. It's something, it kind of lets people loose to, I can breathe, and I want to share this memory. I want to celebrate them, but I'm afraid I'll grieve in the process.
Yeah, so if you're if you're listening to this, we want to give you permission. Look back at your past year or maybe a season that you've walked through. Give yourself permission to grieve some things. Grief comes in all kinds of forms. As I get older, the grief of not having small children in my home.
That grieves you. You celebrate it.
Both, maybe. Yeah. The celebrating of a grandson's first steps. Grief and celebration comes in all forms, but there's something valuable in acknowledging it. And when we take the time to do that, it helps propel us to the future, helps us know ourselves better, sometimes helps ourselves be kind. So if you're listening today and you haven't done this, I encourage you, what is it that you need to grieve? While at the same time, take some time to celebrate. Closing thoughts on that.
As a mentor, I want to be so aware of the people in my life that I'm mentoring that I will know about things that they're probably grieving but not verbalizing.
Well, these are great questions. Anytime you're around people, especially a family gathering, hey, we haven't seen each other in a month. In this past month, what are some things that you grieved? Or what are some things that you celebrated? I think when we dare ask those questions, one of ourselves and two over those around us, we'll discover things. When we sat around the breakfast table, when we did this with our family, my son-in-law said something that I didn't even think about, an area of grief.
Same for me.
Yeah. And so it really helps you, a good open-ended question really helps you strengthen those relationships. It's just invaluable.
I want to keep things private.
Yeah.
When our son-in-law shared that,
Yeah.
it was grieving for him, but it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, wow, we can be in the same situation.
Right.
And one can celebrate something or not put much thought into it.
Right.
And the other person can really be grieving.
Yeah.
That's what stood out for me when he said what he did.
Right. So if you're a mentor, great questions to ask a mentee. Use these in relationships that are important to you. What are you currently grieving? What's something you're currently celebrating? Again, let me just over-reference that where the Dream Guide can be found at JennieAllen.com. It's a free resource. Anything else, Chris, as we wrap up today?
No, we always hope that these podcast episodes help you in some way.
Yeah.
Personally, in your role as a mentor, in your role as a mentee, maybe with your family, your spouse, your kids. We want you to enjoy this and actually take some pieces away with you.
Yeah, for practical application. Yeah. Well, as always, thank you for listening. We know you've got lots of choices out there for podcasts, so we want to thank you for listening. Today has been brought to you by the generous support of a corporate sponsor, Commercial Brick. They've been a family-owned business since 1975, producing quality brick for your home and business. If you want more information, go to commercialbrick.com. As always, thank you for listening to Real Life Mentoring Podcast.